A century ago, they gathered before sunrise to begin the famous Oklahoma land run. They came by wagon, by train, by horseback, by mule, and by foot. And by sunset, the emergence of a state was born. Will Rogers would rope anything in sight, be it friend or foe, or even sometimes foul. As a man, he personified the spirit of the Old West. And legend has it, for years he would jump rope 1,000 times each day. Greg Louganis dominated diving for over a decade. Ken Ferguson is here and is heir apparent to Greg Louganis. You'll also see tonight men's gymnastics. Patrick Kirksey, the NCAA men's all-round champ, in action. Also competing, Tim Ryan, a Stanford student and the youngest national champion since 1975, when Bart Connor won at the age of 17. And Lance Ringnauld is here, second in the men's all-round so far this year at the U.S. Championships. So tonight, weightlifting, diving, and men's gymnastics. ESPN proudly presents the 1989 U.S. Olympic Festival. Well, we are back inside at the Marriott Arena. It was once the Ice House. The other night, well, we had some gold medals awarded and more to come as we start men's gymnastics a little bit later on tonight. Bart Connor is down, along with the former U.S. Olympic champion. Linda Johnson is here, so let's swing it on down for gymnastics action now. The all-round and the team finals, and with the play-by-play, here's Barry.
All right, thank you very much, Jim, and we are down on the floor of the Marriott Arena here, as Jim mentioned, tonight the all-around and team finals. This is the first day of gymnastics competition. We will be with you for the next 3 days as well. I am doubly thrilled tonight to be sharing these microphones with Bart Connor. Not only, of course, is he the 1984 Olympic gold medalist, but it was just announced today his recipe for eggplant parmesan will be in a book on Southern cooking. So I'll tell you, I am excited.
All-around guy.
Bart, let's look back for a moment. 1984, that, of course, was the high point from gymnastics amongst the men. But since that time, very honestly, things have been in something of a downward spiral. Are we going to see things turn around now?
Well, things certainly are looking much better for the U.S. team. They, of course, had a very disappointing 11th place finish in the games in Seoul. But we have a whole new coaching staff led by Bill Meade, Mas Watanabe, Jim Hartung, and Ed Birch. There's more training camps on the schedule. There's even incentive money for the eligible athletes. And there's a lot of fresh new talent. So things are looking very good right now.
We are just 2 weeks past the national championships. And in those championships, 3 people were named to the team that will compete in the World Championships in October, and we're going to see those 3 people tonight.
Yeah, and I think these guys are really terrific. I call them the 3 R's of the U.S. team. First of all, there's Ringnauld, Racanelli, and Ryan. Lance Ringnauld, of course, was 18 years old when he competed for the U.S. team in Seoul, South Korea. Did a terrific job there. Michael Racanelli is only 20 years old. He competes at Ohio State University under Coach Peter Corman. And Tim Ryan was a big surprise winner at the U.S. Nationals. He's out at Stanford. He's only 18 years old, and he provides a lot of strength for the U.S. program.
And there are still 3 positions to be had on that team, and tonight's competition could go a long way toward deciding that. We're going to go now from gymnastics over to weightlifting, and a guy who's been carrying a heavy load all week, Ron Franklin.
Crowd behind us here. It's on to gymnastics, where the 1988 Olympian Lance Ringnauld, who competes out of Albuquerque, will be attempting to fight off challenges from U.S. national champion Tim Ryan, the Oklahoma star, Jared Hanks, and others in the men's all-round competition. So let's take it on down to the floor right now to a couple of Olympic veterans and Barry Tompkins. And see, Barry, what's your best event?
My best event is leaving town. I do that extremely well. I can make it to the airport very quickly. Lance Ringnauld, as you mentioned, is #1 right now. This after 3 rotations. There are 6 rotations, we should mention, in the competition. But as you can see, Mike Racanelli, about whom Bart Connor spoke a few moments ago, is down in 4th place. And Tim Ryan, right at the moment, Bart, is down in 7th place. And there is a very good reason for that.
Well, you know, the U.S. team, as I mentioned, is developing a whole new training schedule. And they have just come off the U.S. National Championships as of 2 weeks ago. They've been through a brutal 2-week training camp, 2-a-day practices, doing lots of exercises. They're gearing toward the World Championships, which are going to be in Stuttgart in the fall, late October. So they're trying to training through this event, and I think some of the guys are hurting. And they've been complaining to the coaches a little bit about it because they've been training through this event, and a lot of the guys don't feel they're as fresh as they should be for this competition.
We are looking at Greg Humphrey completing his floor exercise routine, and he right now sits in 3rd place.
Now this is Greg. This is Greg Humphrey, Cheney's brother.
That's right. It is Cheney Humphrey in 3rd place. I beg your pardon. Greg Humphrey way back in 16th.
Greg is on the junior national team. This is his first year on the junior national team. He is Cheney's brother. In fact, they trained together, of course, down in Albuquerque, New Mexico with Ed Birch at Gold Cup Gymnastics.
Let's talk about what the rotations are and what apparatus these men will work on. Of course, there is the floor exercise. You just saw the pommel horse, the still rings, the vault, parallel bars, and the horizontal bar. Those are the 6 events. This is Scott Barnes.
Scott is 17 years old. He trains with Chuck Schemelka at the Nebraska School of Gymnastics in Lincoln. This is 4 years he's been on the junior national team. He's a very strong young gymnast.
The gray, incidentally, is the team that represents the North. Team's not real significant, even though they do keep a team score. It is an individual sport, and therefore what the folks here are paying to see is individual performance. But just for the record, the gray jerseys that you will see is the North. The West will wear red. The South will wear green.
Scott does a really nice 3rd pass. He did a round off to a laid out backflip with 1.5 twist to a punch front. It's a good combination. That's so far the best part of his exercise. He opened with a tuck double back and was a little bit weak. His tumbling isn't as strong as it needs to be. But keep in mind, in this competition, there's 12 members of the senior national team, and there's 12 members of the junior national team. Scott is on the junior national team and is progressing very nicely.
Are you confident, Bart, that gymnastics amongst the men will make a strong comeback by the time we get to the Olympic Games in 92?
92 is going to be awfully close. After talking with my teammate for many years, Jim Hartung, and now one of the assistant coaches for the U.S. team, he says that the team is looking good, but they're trying to push the difficulty. They're trying to improve in a lot of different areas, but the polish is not quite there yet.
Another look at Scott Barnes. He had a little bit of a problem on this pass.
This is certainly not his best event. He does 1.5 twist through to a double full. It's a good combination. He needs to be just a little bit higher and certainly a little bit cleaner.
Scott Barnes right now back in 16th place, tied with Greg Humphrey, the man whom you saw just a couple of moments ago.
And Scott trained for many years with Larry Moyer at the Parkettes program, and has only been about 18 months in Nebraska training with Chuck Schemelka.
So we await the score of Scott Barnes, and there it is, 9.20 for Scott Barnes, and we will now move to the vault, which is directly in front of us. And the man is Patrick Kirksey. Kirksey in 5th place right now.
Patrick has had a terrific year. He won the NCAA championships in the all-around this year. He's a really big guy. Notice that, 5'10", 165 pounds. When you think the average world-class gymnast is about 5'6" and about 135, that extra weight is certainly makes it very difficult for him, but you can see he's very strong and seems to manage his weight very well. Good-looking vault. That's called a kasamatsu. He tried to do it in a laid-out position, had to pike down a little bit. But as you mentioned a little earlier, Barry, the concern of the U.S. team is that they're training through this competition. Some of the guys are a little tired, and I think it's really affecting Patrick. He's generally a little more explosive than this, but you can see it's good position in the air. He's just a little low and has to pike down on the landing.
And you have to think that now that's going to start to show, particularly so now as we get on later in the competition. Early on, maybe not so much of a problem, although it did bother some.
Once again, it's a good-looking vault. Good clean form in the air, not quite the distance from the horse that you usually see from Patrick.
So that is Patrick Kirksey, and he still sits in 5th place, 9.35 on that vault. That is not likely to hurt him too much right now. The leader is Lance Ringgold, and we'll be back to Oklahoma City right after this.
This This golden moment is brought to you by your nearby Century 21 Real Estate Professional, a proud sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Festival. When it comes to real estate, put your trust in number one. The men's North basketball team had a history of going undefeated once it reached the gold medal game. P.J. Carlesimo's East squad seemed unstoppable behind the scoring of Todd Day and Darren Morningstar. But Judd Heathcote's North team would dominate in the end. Matt Stengenga of Michigan State and Henry Williams of Indianapolis scored 14 points apiece to lead the North to an 85-78 win. For them, a golden moment.
Barry Tompkins, Bart Connor, Kathy Johnson alongside also. She'll be talking to some of the participants in tonight's competition, and she, of course, will join us when we get to the women's competition tomorrow. Already had the women's compulsories. As we take a look at Lance Ringnauld. He's from Albuquerque, New Mexico, 19 years old, and a very bright hope for men's gymnastics.
Lance was a surprise to make the '88 Olympic team. I thought he was going to be ready in about '89 or '90, but he is a really talented young man. As you'll see by his parallel bar routine, he does lots of difficulty and unique sequences. He opens with a planche on the end, peach straddle cut. There's a giant way out on the end. All of this gains him originality points from the judges. Front 1 1/4. His pace is very quick, too. Reverse stutz. Now he's going to take his time a little bit. There's a nice high back toss. Diamond-off. Swing pirouette. There's a good stutz right to the top. Another stutz. Here comes his dismount. Pike double back. Just a little short on the landing. Otherwise, an excellent routine for Lance.
Crowd really warming to Lance Ringnauld here. Remember, he was the leader after 3 rotations and not likely to hurt himself after that performance on the parallel bars. Another look, Bart.
There's the stutz as he sets up for his dismount. Lance has really good, clean form. He's had a rough year. You know, he went from the games in Seoul right to the Winter Nationals, and he's been competing all out all year long. He seems to be pretty tired. He's the kind of kid who has such a zest for gymnastics. All of this year-long training with no time to work on new skills has been awfully tough on Lance. I'm impressed that he's holding together as well as he is.
And he was the youngest member of the United States Olympic team in 20 years.
I mentioned earlier, we talked about the training stipends that the athletes have been earning. Lance, although he's not going to compete in the NCAA program, he is eligible for the training stipend because he doesn't conflict with the NCAA program. He earned $7,000 this year at the Nationals toward his training expenses.
We will get you his score as soon as it becomes available. There is a discussion going on between the judges. That usually happens when there is a great disparagement between the judges. As you look at Cheney Humphrey, he is the other half of the Humphrey brothers, and right now he's in 3rd place as he prepares to get on the high bar.
Cheney is an amazing athlete. In fact, his mother, who was a music teacher, took him to ballet lessons when he was 4 years old, and they asked him to leave. They said, why don't you try gymnastics? You have a little too much energy for ballet. So they sent him to a gym, and he's been there ever since.
Kathy Johnson pointed out a little while ago, yes, the body of a football linebacker, obviously not that big, but he's built exactly like a linebacker.
He's awfully strong, and yet he has good lines. It's impressive, and boy, can he do a release sequence here. Reverse heck, Ginger. 3 in a row, and boy, is that nice.
Listen to the crowd here at Oklahoma City. There have been great crowds all along throughout this Olympic festival.
He fulfilled his requirement of the Eagle Giant swings. Look at the speed for this dismount. A laid out, full out. One step on the landing, but that's a nice routine.
Cheney Humphrey, fine performance to a most appreciative crowd here at the Marriott Arena. Lance Ringnauld's numbers on parallel bars, and they are outstanding, Bart, 9.85.
Terrific work on parallel bars as Cheney was performing on the high bar. Look at this. Reverse hecht. The first one with his legs together, the second one in the straddle position, and the third to a Ginger. Boy, that combination of 3 release elements is world class. Here's the dismount. It's a laid out double back with a full in the second flip right there. Just a little short. But that's a terrific routine for Cheney.
Very good. He was, as we mentioned, in 3rd place after 3 rotations. Definitely will not hurt himself here. And we should point out, too, that you keep hearing Bart referring to some of the names of the particular skills, and if they sound a little bit funny to you, there's probably a fairly good reason for it. They're named for the person who actually came up with them. And there is also a conference going on regarding Cheney Humphrey's score, so we will keep you posted just as we did with Lance Ringnauld. It'll be just a moment before we get his score.
The reason for the conference, of course, as you mentioned, the judges can't find an average point. This is competition 1, which requires the gymnasts to do 2 C moves, 4 B moves, and 6 A moves. They don't have to do the most difficult D moves, although all of these athletes are doing them.
Kevin Davis now on floor exercise.
Kevin opens with a full in. Oh, and he puts his hands down. It looked to me like he opened up just a hair early. He had plenty of height.
So that will hurt him. Kevin Davis coming in here after 3 rotations in second place behind Lance Ringdahl and ahead of Cheney Humphrey, but will it stay that way?
That's a new pass for Kevin. His second pass was a half twisting 1 and 3 in a laid out position. This is great work here. He does flares, up to a handstand, down to flares, and to a little break dancing. Boy, the crowd loves that.
Do not attempt that in a telephone booth, folks.
I think I've seen that on the dance floor a few late nights at the training camp or the Olympic Village, as a matter of fact. Kevin's best event is the pommel horse, and he did a nice job at bringing some of the elements that he has perfected on the pommel horse over to the floor exercise with those flares up to a handstand. You heard the bell. That means that 50 seconds have elapsed. He has 20 seconds to complete the rest of his exercise. Here's his last run. Should be a tuck double. And once again, short. And certainly for Kevin, there's another point in evidence that the guys are tired. The training camp, as I mentioned, the training through this event, I think, has taken its toll on the team.
And it isn't to minimize the importance of this event. Everybody, of course, wants to do well here. But, of course, the World Championships are really the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that's coming up in October. And that, of course, is when everybody really wants to peak. Let's take another look at his final run.
Yeah, everything looked good here. Technically, everything's just fine. Excellent reach. He's high. It just didn't have quite enough juice to pull it around. Normally, you see Kevin Davis make that.
Let's take you back for just a moment to the performance we saw a moment ago on high bar by Cheney Humphrey. After that conference, a score of 9.65. And right at the moment, as we stand, it moves Cheney Humphrey into second place behind Lance Ringdahl. Davis dropped way down, or will drop, we believe. And there is Cheney Humphrey, and he has to be very pleased. 9.65.
Cheney did a terrific job at the U.S. Nationals just recently, and I think surprised a lot of people. Boy, they got a good stable of gymnasts down there. As you see, Lance Ringdahl, he's from Gold Cup Gymnastics in Albuquerque, coached by Ed Birch, as is Cheney Humphrey. Both of those guys are doing a fine job at representing the U.S. team.
Still no score on Kevin Davis, and while we await that and another conference, let's take you back upstairs in this very same arena to Jim Kelly. Jim?
You know, Barry, it must be a little bit intimidating for the competitors here with Olympic gold medal champion and underwear pitch person Bart Connor alongside. Names you'll know in diving when this festival is over: Kent Ferguson and Matt Scoggin. We'll go to the pool next. In the men's all-round, after 4 rotations, Lance Ringdahl is the current leader. Cheney Humphrey is next. Kevin Davis, who you saw in that last routine. And there are the standings then after 4 rotations. We'll be going back to Barry and Bart in just a little while. Let's put Bart Connor, the 1984 U.S. Olympic gold medal champion, back on the spot as he is looking for perhaps his future successor, and his sidekick alongside, minus the tuxedo tonight, Barry Tompkins.
Barry Tompkins with Bart Connor back here at the Marriott Arena here in Oklahoma City. This is men's gymnastics. First night of gymnastics competition. We had the women's compulsories earlier today. This, the all-around and team competition amongst the men. And as you can see, another outstanding crowd here, and a crowd that is really into the competition, and why not? After the first 4 rotations, that is to say 4 of 6, Lance Ringdahl, not a surprise there, is in first place. But I think it's fair to say, Bart, that second, third, and fourth places are something of a surprise.
Well, certainly Kevin Davis and Tom Schlesinger belong to be in that top notch. They were Olympians in Seoul, and but they were a little weaker at the recent U.S. Championships. Cheney Humphrey, I think, is the one that's surprising a lot of people. Boy, we knew he had it in him, but he has really turned on here.
We go to the pommel horse now. This, the 5th rotation, John Roethlisberger.
John's currently tied for 8th in the all-around, and he is an impressive young man. His dad, of course, the coach at the University of Minnesota, and will be John's coach next year. His dad was a former Olympian, in fact, the 1968 Olympic Games.
And his sister also, right?
His sister was an Olympian, Marie, and the whole family has been big supporters and promoters of gymnastics in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. John was a fine junior gymnast, and he has just stepped up into the ranks as a senior gymnast in fine style. Boy, that's a nice routine.
Excellent, and listen to the crowd. He loves it, and so does the crowd. He is pumped.
And what a treat to see that. You know, 2 weeks ago at the U.S. Championships, he broke one of his fingers on the parallel bars when he missed his hand placement. You'd think that that would have not allowed him to be in such good shape on the pommel horse, where, of course, having a broken finger could really inhibit you. You can see his left baby finger there is taped together, but wow, what a finish. He goes up to a handstand and does a full pirouette as he travels down the horse.
He was tied for 8th place after 4 rotations, very likely to move up now. Meanwhile, we move over now to the parallel bars, and Patrick Kirksey, as you see, he is the current NCAA all-around champion.
Patrick at this point is 6th in this competition in the all-around, and he does a terrific mount. That's a peach straddle cut. Did it very nicely. Back toss, back toss. Now Patrick looks a little more aggressive here on the parallel bars than I've seen him in some of the earlier events. This is a great exercise so far. Oh, a little sloppy on that Diamondov, but he is so strong. He does a nice job in controlling the position. One very important key in the sport of gymnastics is the strength to body weight ratio. We mentioned he's 165 pounds, but he is so strong. Unfortunately, I think he's just a little out of gas at the end of that routine. He did finish with a pike double back.
Scoring is now in for John Roethlisberger. You saw him a moment ago on the pommel horse, 9-4. We're going to be jumping around a great deal. And while we're watching someone else, of course, that's when the score of the previous competitor comes up. So 9-4 for Roethlisberger. And then in a moment, we will have Patrick Kirksey's score.
And once again, Patrick did a terrific mount. That's the peach straddle cut. That fulfills a requirement that the judges are looking for, a below-the-bar move.
Tom Schlesinger now on the horizontal bar. Let's make one quick correction. After we gave you 9-4 for Roethlisberger, that score was changed to 9-4-5.
Tom had a lot of trouble on that Ginger. He did a one-arm Ginger and caught the bar right as his waist. I'm amazed he was able to hang on and continue the routine. Tom is currently 4th in the all-around, having a terrific competition. After those German giant swings, he continues. Here's his dismount. A nice, clean, laid-out double back.
You know, it's really amazing to me, Bart, that watching this sport for about the last 10 or 11 years, it always seems like there's nothing new that can be done, and yet it almost seems as though every year, or at least every quadrennium, somebody's coming up with something new.
Not only new elements, but also new combinations. But look at what happens here. There's the Ginger. You can see he's way in close. Does an amazing job at keeping that on the bar and continuing the routine. It's a good-looking, clean, laid-out double back. Tough finish for Tom Schlesinger.
Wow. Take you back a moment ago to the parallel bars of Patrick Kirksey. 9.1 is as good as he could do. He did have some troubles, as you saw a moment ago. Floor exercise now, and David St. Pierre.
David, of course, out of UCLA. His second tumbling run is a high, clean, layout backflip with a double twist.
Los Angeles, one of your many homes. Of course, you could say just about everybody in this competition is a homeboy for you. Lives in Oklahoma, lives in Las Vegas, lives in Los Angeles.
I'm a nomad.
I'm telling you.
Boy, I love that move right there. His third tumbling run was a 1.5 twisting back dive roll. Really good looking, high and clean. And he rolls out. This is the flares, of course, and he spindles. The spindle means that he does, as his legs move in the clockwise fashion, he twists his upper body counterclockwise.
David St. Pierre in 5th place after 4 rotations, but there have been some good numbers put up in this 5th rotation.
Here's David's last run. Tuck double back. Nicely done.
David St. Pierre. And he should score reasonably well.
You know, I saw David a few years ago, and I really thought that this young man was going to just knock him dead on the U.S. national team. Well, this is the meet, I think, where it's starting to all come together for David. He's currently 5th in the all-around, and you can see as he works through his flares here in the spindle, does a good job at keeping elevation above the floor. He cranks it up to a handstand and lowers down to a straddle split. Here's the tuck double back. It's a round-off back handspring. Notice the high reach, good position in the air, and nice landing.
He is 22 years old, but as the man on my right will attest, that is not by any means too old in men's gymnastics.
Well, certainly it's getting younger and younger, but I was an old man at 26, so I guess it's possible to maintain a few more years.
Tim Ryan, a living definition, to coin a phrase from another sport, of playing hurt. 9-6-5 the score for David St. Pierre a moment ago on floor X.
Boy, that was a terrific angle to see the opening sequence that Tim used on his pommel horse routine. He does an excellent exercise. He works down towards the end here. This is a Bailey to a handstand. Lowers down into single leg work. The judges need to see a scissor in at least 2 scissors in the exercise. He continues through, hop to a handstand. Good exercise. That will score well.
Got to be tough on him. He has had trouble with his wrists in recent days, but it didn't seem to affect him there at all.
The last part of his exercise, he catches a leg, which will be a deduction on that scissor. There's a reverse scissor. Now this is a tough move. From the circles, he's going to hop to the end and crank that thing up to a handstand. That's really hard to do.
So they tabulate his score right now, and we will have that for you just as soon as we come back. Tim Ryan tied for 8th after 4 rotations. We'll be back to let you know how he did right after this commercial word.
This golden moment is brought to you by your nearby Century 21 real estate professional, a proud sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Festival. When it comes to real estate, put your trust in number 1. In front of a standing room only crowd, Diane Simpson, 20 years old from Northwestern University, captured the gold in rhythmic gymnastics all around. Simpson, an Olympian last year, drew the crowd to their feet with her final routine. And the judges agreed that that performance was indeed superb. They awarded her a near-perfect score. For Diane Simpson, a golden moment.
Back on the floor of the Marriott Arena, not a 3-ring circus, but a 6-ring circus. Men's gymnastics, the all-around and team finals. I'm Barry Tompkins with Clark Connor, Kathy Johnson alongside as well. And we are in the midst of an outstanding competition. We saw Tim Ryan a moment ago on the pommel horse. 9-3-5 was his score. We're coming down near the end of the 5th rotation. Remember, there are 6 rotations, and you have an idea at the end of round number 5, things are going to be very, very close indeed as we look at Mike Racanelli now. First in floor exercise, as you see, in the United States Championships just a couple of weeks ago.
Mike is currently 11th in the all-around in this competition here, but he has a terrific floor routine. Watch this mount. Lay out double back, flip-flop, straddle jump, punch front 1 1/4. What a mount. Mike, of course, is coached by Peter Corman, who won a bronze medal on floor exercise at the 76 Olympic Games in Montreal, the first medal won by a U.S. male gymnast in 44 years. Michael's second tumbling run was a full twisting double. He does the flares up to a handstand. Most of the gymnasts are using that flare sequence. I like the originality here on this move. Notice the wide press position in the handstand, the straddle through the splits. Judges are looking for original elements, and certainly that fulfills that requirement. This exercise is really hot so far. He is right on. Handspring front full, straddle jump, punch front. That's called a Y scale. Judges need to see a balance on either 1 foot or 1 arm. Here's his last run. A tuck double back. Great routine for Michael Racanelli.
Just terrific. 20-year-old Mike Racanelli. He attends Oklahoma State, as you mentioned, coached by Peter Corman. Let's take another look at his mount.
Racanelli opens with a laid-out double back. Notice the terrific position in the air. Good stretch body line. He pulls it around through to the back handspring, straddle jump, front 1 1/4. Great combination tumbling of double back flips through to front flips.
So he has to be very pleased, and he looks very happy with that. And we will have his score in just a moment as you look at Kevin Davis. Davis preparing for the pommel horse. He was the national champion in this event. And he right now sits in 3rd place, having a very good competition.
He is doing an excellent job, and of course this is one of his best events. And watch this mount sequence. He opens here, the back more up, travels to the end, a little trouble as he clipped the horse, travels back across the horse. Now this is an amazing sequence. Notice he's going to do flares in a spindle and travel across the horse at the same time. Oh, he caught his foot there. That will be a deduction. He picks up after the scissors, travels down. He'll loop around handstand and a pirouette dismount.
So Kevin Davis with a couple of little bobbles there. And the battle lines have been clearly drawn now as Mike Racanelli, you saw a moment ago on floor X, he was in 11th place after 4 rotations. Look at this score, Bart.
9.9. Nice job for Racanelli.
Can hardly do it any better than that. And that certainly is going to move him way up.
There's no question that's a world-class floor routine. As we mentioned at the top of the show, he's one of the 3 locks on the U.S. team going to the World Championships. If he could make it to the finals there, he might medal. Conrad
Wursanger now. He is in 12th place, but he has to be looking at what Mike Racanelli did as he moves to the parallel bars.
This is a terrific event for Conrad. He does a lot of difficulty, a very fast-paced routine, very precise. Oh, little trouble. That was a Diamondov with an extra quarter pirouette as a slide glide. Minor form break there. Reverse stutz to a straddle cut. Conrad has really good technique, good form, good position. Nice, clean landing on that tuck double back.
But one little bit of problem. Couldn't quite pull his Diamondov off.
He got into a little trouble early on, but as you can see here, he cleaned up his exercise with a good clean stutz. He had to rush a little bit as he swung down for this tuck double back. Normally he dismounts with a pike double back. He changed mid-skill and handled it beautifully.
Now, will the judges know that, and will they deduct for that?
No, although you get more points back for doing a pike double back, there certainly are no deductions for doing a tuck double back.
Let's take you back a moment ago to Kevin Davis, who you saw on the pommel horse. 9-2 was his score. Lance Ringnahl now, he is the leader. And really hasn't had to look back over his shoulder too much, although Cheney Humphrey had a very good floor exercise in this rotation. He scored 9-8. You didn't get a chance to see that, but that should move him up. So it does mean that Lance Ringnahl cannot back off on the high bar here.
Lance was second in the U.S. Nationals, as we mentioned earlier. Lance is such a terrific gymnast. He has good style. He has all the difficulty. He was a surprise second place. He was very heavily favored going into the U.S. Nationals, where Tim Ryan won. So the fact that Lance is doing so well here certainly has to make him pleased. This exercise is really strong. He has everything in there. Here's a dismount, a laid out double full out. Great landing.
Did it very well. Now he will need to score at least 9.35, and even to my amateur eye, I would have to think he did that.
Boy, that's a world-class routine. He has great difficulty. And watch this dismount. This is a laid out double full out. We saw him have some trouble with this at the Nationals. He over-rotated, but he is strong here. Look at that face.
He is a happy man, and why not? He will remain in first place, barring the unforeseen. And the unforeseen is that he would score less than 9.35. We will hold it until we get his score for you. It appears, though, that Lance Ringnahl has done enough to keep himself in the lead over Cheney Humphrey. And then the battle will be for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Certainly, Mike Racanelli has moved up in fine fashion. So we will keep you updated on Lance Ringnahl's score. In the meantime, let's take you way up to the rafters and Jim Kelly. Jim?
All right, Barry, thank you. Up here in Bob Uecker's seats, we welcome live gymnastics action here. The men's rotation, Bart Connor and Barry Tompkins down watching, along with Kathy Johnson. And Bart, as we join you now, I guess I'd like to ask you a quick question. How difficult is it for men gymnasts to stay at the very top of their sport for a 3-year period, given the grueling demands of all the training that they have to go through and the risk of injury? I mean, are these people that we'll be looking for Barcelona, and how long can they stay at the top of their game?
You're looking at Cheney Humphrey. We apologize for a little bit of a communication problem that we're having between our anchor position and Jim Kelly and Bart Connor and myself down here. Cheney Humphrey has just performed on the pommel horse, and he did have a couple of bobbles, and you have to think that he just is not going to be able to pass Lance Ringnauld, regardless of what Ringnauld does in his final rotation.
No, in fact, Cheney had a major error and will drop down significantly. Lance is certainly a lock, I think, for the all-around title here.
He is leading the competition after 5 rotations. Cheney Humphrey second, and David St. Pierre, who you are looking at, is sitting in 3rd place. So St. Pierre, as a result of Cheney Humphrey's bobble on the pommel horse, should he be able to put a sensational, and it would have to be sensational, performance. Cheney Humphrey, incidentally, 8.9 on pommel horse, so it does open the door ever so slightly for David St. Pierre on the same apparatus. Here he is.
David is currently trailing Cheney by about 0.7 of a point, but he could do it here, and boy, he has a good combination there. 3 backmores in a row on 1 pommel, a little form break, but that's a D move, one of the most difficult elements being done on the pommel horse. He has good toe point. This is impressive. His legs are nice and straight and locked out. There's the flare more. Right to a handstand on the end. That's going to score well for David.
Did very well.
Terrific meet for this young man.
Crowd likes it. We'll see if it's enough. So he could move into 2nd place, allowing for the fact that Lance Ringnauld has done everything but win.
You can see here he does the flares. There's a more. Continues in the flares. Hops down to the end and finishes in a very clean handstand.
We will watch for his score. He needs a score of 9.65 to move ahead of Cheney Humphrey into 2nd place behind Lance Ringnauld. Meanwhile, Tim Ryan prepares to perform on the rings. And as we mentioned, here's a guy who, by his own admission, is a little bit worn out right now.
He was even quoted in the paper today as saying, "Don't expect a lot of great performances out of me." He's been nursing some injuries. He's been having a rough time here at the training camp. But once again, they're training through this event, looking forward, hopefully, to big successes in the World Championships late October in Stuttgart.
David St. Pierre, not enough. 9.45. He needed 9.65 to move into 2nd place. So Cheney Humphrey will finish in 2nd place. Tim Ryan now.
It's a real treat to see Tim perform on the rings. He's very strong, has all the strength elements. He opens here with a kip, press to a handstand. That's called an inverted iron cross position. He powers down to a move there. That's called a Maltese cross. And lowers to a skin the cat position and then continues. Watch this combination. Here's a whip it right to an L cross. 3 incredible strength moves right in a row. Called a front uprise. That's an L position, of course, and that's what they call a hollow back press to a handstand. The judges need to see a press to a handstand as well as a swings to a handstand as he's doing there.
Upper body strength has to be, I imagine, just phenomenal.
Oh, and what a dismount. Laid out double back, and he totally rocks the landing.
So Tim Ryan, who was 9th after 5 rounds, really sticks it. And here's another look at the dismount.
From the handstand, he's going to bail and do 2 flips in the laid out position, good stretch body, and that's how you do that landing.
So Tim Ryan almost certainly will move up. Again, we mentioned that many of these competitors looking not by the Olympic Festival by any stretch of the imagination, but really toward the World Championships in Stuttgart, as you mentioned, in October. Here's Lance Ringnauld, and basically what he has to do here in floor exercise is show up.
And this is certainly one of Lance's best events. He's a terrific tumbler. Has a great opening tumbling run. Watch this. Count up back handspring. Laid out. 1.5 twisting, 1 3/4 flip. Beautiful opening run.
Ryan's score on the rings, 9-6, and that will move him up.
I love that combination on the floor as Lance does 4 hops in a row out of the circles. Look at the flexibility in that press to handstand.
Lance Ringwald needs only 8-4 to win the all-around title.
Here's Lance's second tumbling run. Front step out. Through to double twist. Punch front 1 1/4. Good combination. Showing the judges both front tumbling and back tumbling. Once again, the judges are looking for the gymnast to cover the full 12-meter by 12-meter floor area. They have 50 to 70 seconds to do that. Look at the flexibility. That's called a Y scale. It normally looks like a Y. His looks sort of like a sideways T. That was nicely done. There's a tuck double dismount. Great finish.
Think he'll get an 8-4?
No problem for Lance, and it's really nice to see that relief on his face. He's really pleased with his performance today.
He should be, and he really finished with a flourish. He didn't back off 1 iota. Take another look at the dismount.
A couple of weeks ago at the Nationals, Lance was certainly disappointed that he didn't win the all-around title, but you can see it in his face here. He's glad he's got it back.
Lance Ringwald has won it without question. Jim Kelly will tell you just how much he has won it by. Cheney Humphrey was second, and probably David St. Pierre was third. Up top to Jim Kelly.
Okay, Barry and Bart, thank you very much. Nice job. So the obvious winner, Lance Ringwald. All right. Well, from a couple of gymnastic experts down on the floor to one alongside, a man who became a household word, of course, back in 1976 when he coached Nadia Comaneci to the Olympic gold in Montreal and the Olympics up there, the Summer Olympic Games, and then really a household name in 1984 with Mary Lou Retton, Bella Caroli alongside. Thank you for sitting and joining us tonight. You've got 6 girls here, Bella's girls, if you will, and they're all 13 years of age. Who is the best right now, this stage of development?
It's really hard to pinpoint one, and I really don't want to take this adventure to pinpoint somebody because there are very close value. As the paper form shows, though, the little Kim Zemeskal has the best track record the past, maybe in the past 6 months, winning the American Classic, competing in Europe, winning a very important competition in France. So she's the one right now who would stand a little bit more out than the other ones. But I really feel the ranking, the places can change very, very quickly anytime, because I just told, these kids are extremely, extremely close to each other. As preparation, as desire, as dedication, and as gymnastic value too.
Bella, after you defected in '76 and you set up Bella's shop, if you will, in Houston and started becoming the premier coach in women's gymnastics, you've changed your philosophy a little bit now, and you're starting the girls out at a much younger age, at about 5 or 6 years of age. How come?
Well, it's always been the philosophy of it, behind my instructional line, starting as early age. As a matter of fact, I was the first one around the world who started out with very, very young kids to do gymnastics. First time, just like playing with them. Then suddenly realizing they have a tremendous capability, a tremendous potential. And that's how came out Nadia's generation back in 1974, 75. Then we hit the Olympic glory in '76 when the little Nadia became Olympic champion.
Sit right where you are, because this is fascinating, and we'd like to learn more from Bella Caroli when we come back to Oklahoma City, and ESPN's live coverage of this 1989 U.S. Olympic Festival continues. 6 girls here, Bella's girls, if you will, all 13 years of age. Is that by design, so you can bring them all along together and maybe have a future champion emerge?
You see, it's extremely important. The Olympic Sport Festival in this year gave us a tremendous opportunity to push into the fire, in the squat fire, our best junior team. What does it mean for us? We see now our future. We're going to see exactly what we're going to have in 1992. That's the time when a young, talented athlete can become and can develop into an Olympic competitor. That's happened back in old times, back in 1981, 82. Mary Lou started out as a young junior and developed into an Olympic champion. That in 1985, immediately after the '84 Olympic, we started out with Phoebe Mears and the Lolo Christie generation and developed them into excellent Olympic athletes. Now we have our future in front of us. These kids are probably even more maybe not talented, but extremely dedicated and decided, you know, to hit some big times.
Great to talk with you with that same emotion that we saw you hug Nadia and Mary Lou Retton. All right, thank you for joining us live, Bella Caroli, the coach of Bella's girls, 6 13-year-olds here, and maybe, who knows, another Mary Lou Retton. We'll wrap up our evening's coverage when we come back to Oklahoma City. The 1989 U.S. Olympic Festival live on ESPN. Brought to you tonight by Scope, the best thing, first thing in the morning. And by HBO, the biggest, the best. Nobody brings it home like HBO. A quick check on the final standings in the men's all-round. Lance Ringnauld, Cheney Humphrey gets the silver, David St. Pierre the bronze. And the men's team competition final standings, east, south, north, and west. Don't forget, more live coverage from Oklahoma City tomorrow. Men's, the gymnastics preview coming up, diving, the women's 10-meter, and track and field at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. For all our U.S. ESPN Olympic Festival team, I'm Jim Kelly. Good night, everybody.